Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have a 1979 Flying V. And in today's episode, I'm gonna teach you a little bit about the vintage Vs. So to start that all off, we have to go back to Gibson's original futuristic design of the late 50s. The original Flying Vs, they're made of Korina, also known as Limba wood, and they were produced from 1958 through 1959 in extremely limited numbers. We're talking like around 98 of them. And then from 1960 through about 1964, you can find some custom orders, but they all looked, relatively the same. It was initially a string-through design. You had your output jack on the face of the guitar as well as its own separate little scratch plate. They also had this cool little bumper strip on the side of them that made it so you could actually sit and play with these things. They had a giant golden Gibson emblem on the headstock, and they were just absolutely beautiful, but absolutely not well loved back in the day. Due to there being very few of those guitars made, and the fact that the Flying V later became super popular, the prices are through the roof on original Vs. But in 1966, Gibson reintroduced the Flying V. Apparently there was one made that was very similar to the 50s style with the Korina body, but the first prototype of what we now consider the 67 style Flying V was made in 1966. And that's this style. The only major difference between like a late 60s Flying V versus like your later 70s and early 80s is your specs are a little bit different. Instead of having a one-piece mahogany body and mahogany neck, they're multi-pieced. Your neck joints are a little bit different, and your pickups will vary slightly from patent number T-tops to the engraved patent. Another feature that makes these less desirable than the 60s ones is the volute at the back of the headstock. Honestly, there's quite a bit of difference, including the headstock shape, the type of tuners. The original 60s got the Lyre Vibrola system. They really are quite different when you actually start to compare them side by side. But this is what those look like. They have the whole pick guard covering pretty much the entire face of the guitar. You have two humbucking pickups that are mounted to the pick guard, not with pickup rings, an ABR1 bridge with a tailpiece, two volumes on the outer side of the controls, and a master tone, with a three-way toggle switch and an output jack within this large pick guard. They did away with that little rubber bumper, unfortunately, but this is like pretty much what I would consider the quintessential Flying V shape that most people know. When they think of a Flying V, they think of this one. And why is that? Because of Hendrix and a bunch of other people who have made the late 60s Vs so incredibly popular. Hendrix's psychedelic V, the one that has all the paintings on it, it's called the Love Drops V. That was a 67. And he also had one custom ordered in 69 called the Flying V Custom. Now, I believe it was like 1991 or something, Gibson reissued those, and it wasn't until I was doing a little bit of extra research on Vs that I realized there was actually one of those things made. They are pretty sweet looking with those split diamond inlays, and I love that Gibson Mother of Pearl logo on the headstock. Another model that we should talk about if we're talking about older Vs is the 1971 Medallion Vs. They were made to commemorate the Olympics for that year, and those things also go for crazy money. You can see one of those in the Breaking the Law music video. But since the introduction of the 1967 styled V, not a lot changed for these during the Norlin era. These were never swapped over to maple necks. They're kind of like the SGs. They were spared from that. And honestly, there wasn't any other Flying V you could get. This was just the one style. They didn't change or modify the V until 1979 with the introduction of the Gibson V2. Also, in 1981, they reissued the Korina-styled Vs with the Heritage series. And then in 1983, they introduced the alder body thrash metal type Vs, and we've had a bunch of different Vs since then. But these Vs are magical. I'm not even trying to sell you this guitar because it's already sold. But there really is something extraordinary special about these 70s Flying Vs. I'm sure the 60s ones are the same, but I've never had the privilege to hold one of those in my hands. If you have never touched one of these, if you have never played one of these, do yourself a favor and grab the very next one you see. Now, when I say there's something magical, you know how sometimes you get a guitar that's really resonant? You strum it acoustically, it sounds great and it projects well, but sometimes you also get a guitar that vibrates really nicely. So once again, you play that chord, not only does it strum out really nice, but you feel it vibrating in the body. And then if you have a really well-made guitar, you'll feel it in the neck. And that is what these stinking little 70s Flying Vs do. They're just resonant monsters. They are fantastic, and I cannot suggest these enough. There's a reason why clean, unmolested, unbroken examples go for such crazy money. I mean, to give you an idea, the headstock repaired, refinished ones will generally sell between $2,000 to $2,500. If you can find one that has not had a headstock repair and has the original finish and all the original parts, which is nearly impossible anymore, they can sell for a pretty penny. Anywhere between $3,500 to $6,000 is fair game on these, depending on your finish. And why is that? Because these things are such heavy rockers. People just play the crap out of these things, so it's just natural when you're crazy on stage that eventually something is going to happen to them. And on top of that, they're super ridiculously lightweight. I mean, this thing's not neck heavy, and it's only 6 pounds, 5 ounces. Perfect weight. So it is a perfect gigging guitar. Need more proof that these things are awesome? Kirk Hammett's famous black Flying V is a 1979. So the specs for this guy, you have a rosewood fretboard with a mahogany body with original T-top pickups, ABR1 bridge with tailpiece. You've got witch hat knobs on these later 70s ones. And the mahogany body, it's really hard to see it. But if you get it in the light just right, you can see it is a 2-piece body. They matched up that wood grain expertly. It's hard to see. Same thing with the neck. It is a 3-piece mahogany neck. It's got a really nice rounded C profile to it, but it really is tricky to see those seam lines. The only way I could see where it is if you get the headstock just right, you can see the seam lines underneath the black finish. So now that we've learned a little bit about these magical Kalamazoo-made Flying Vs, let's go ahead and hear how this one sounds. Now that we know how this instrument sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. As far as 70s flying Vs go, this thing's actually pretty clean. The face of the headstock, it's kind of got an impression mark right here, like somebody left a tuner on it for a long period of time. You have your original tuners here, truss rod works just fine. One thing I do want to note on this tuner, you can see it's got some corrosion on that D string right here. All the other ones are nice, perfectly and shiny, so I'm not really sure what happened to that tuner. You have a rosewood fretboard on these, and the frets, they are very tiny. I mean, these definitely aren't tall modern frets by any means. The body here, pickguard has aged nicely, kind of a light tobacco stain on top of it here. And as with flying Vs, you get some light scuffs and dings around the strap buttons. Just a beautiful example here. All electronics are original. It's all been untouched and it's all perfectly functional. You can see you've got some corrosion to your chrome hardware here, but for the most part, definitely nice and clean. Back of the headstock, serial number 70089, looks like 010, made in USA, Kalamazoo plant. If anybody has a serial number that is 79, made the 10th day of the year, so that'd be 70109, please let me know, because I'm looking for somebody to find their birthday guitar. And when I saw this one, it's like, oh man, you were 2 days off from becoming a rich man. So really the only thing to make mention of this headstock is you can see the 5 pieces that make it up. If you get it in the light just right. But the wing line is very apparent on this side. It's not a crack stemming from the tuner. Don't worry about that. It definitely follows that seam line, but it is a little bit more apparent than other areas. Another feature that makes these less desirable than the 60s ones is the volute at the back of the headstock. But despite these things having those, it really doesn't save them from the headstock breaks. And I think it's just because these things are such excellent playing guitars that people just really hammer them out and they have a good time with them. And that's why they end up breaking all the time. As far as the neck goes, you do have a few light nicks and dings on it. Most predominantly right here. There's kind of a finish breaking one. You have a nice rounded heel joint here. Some of those 60s ones, they're like giant blocks. I'm not sure what's going on with those. Back of the instrument here, when you get the light on it, you can definitely see the buckle worming marks. I mean, it's not a mint condition example, but you don't have the finish, chewed up off of it or anything. So I can live with a little bit of buckle worming as long as it's not too extreme. So everything's looking pretty good there. The sides of the instrument, you can see you've got quite a few light nicks and dings as well. Take a look at the insides here. I love this tobacco burst finish. You can see they took the time to do it on the sides even. It's just a beautiful instrument. I don't know if I showed you this, but it's also at the sides of the headstock. So a lot of attention to detail went into these because they're not necessarily fancy guitars by any means. They don't have binding on the neck. You don't have binding on the body. So at least they went all out when it came to the finish. Now we'll take a look under Blacklight. As you can see, face of the headstock, everything's looking good there. On to the body. Pickguard glows beautifully, as does the finish here. We really only have one area to go over on this guitar, and it's kind of on the side of the neck where you've got some clear coat wear. But the back, it's in good shape. Back of the neck here, this is the area I'm talking about. It's almost like there's a little bit of clear coat wear, or, you know, maybe even a little bit of overspray. I'm not sure. I mean, there's definitely no breaks, cracks, or repairs, but it just kind of runs along the side of the fretboard there. We'll show you that area under regular lighting as well. So nothing hiding there. So that's about the only thing to know about that. But no breaks, cracks, or repairs on the headstock there. And that's the most important thing when it comes to these. So it passes the blacklight test and lets us know about a little bit of finish wear or something along the edge of the neck. This instrument comes in its original case. Let me tell you guys, these Flying V cases from the 70s and 80s, they do not hold up. Now, I don't think it's because the design is necessarily bad, it's just people gig the crap out of these things. So this one is actually in really good shape despite all these little wear and tears. Most notably is underneath the Gibson logo. It looks like there's some sort of amateur Tolex repair. You just don't mess with it and it'll look okay. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th back latch. And the interior is a nice red color. You do have a compartment lid right here. These are pretty well known for falling apart too. Usually this black backing will fall off, then the wooden part is exposed, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about right there. This one kind of needs hammered down a little bit too, but it still functions pretty well. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Tobacco Sunburst 1979 Flying V, check the link in the description. That will take you to the Reverb for sale ad. Thank you, Troglodytes, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.